Hi, I'm Chimbiru Gimode. Very delighted indeed that you could join me from wherever you are as we look at some of the theories of the media. On 25th October this year, the Daily Nation ran this screaming headline: Bid to raise school fees. On the same day, the Standard had this headline: Varsity fees shocker. What do those two headlines evoke in you? What kind of emotions run through your mind when you see those two headlines? If you are a parent, you probably have some feelings of distress or exasperation or totally confused. If you are a university student like you and I, probably you are imagining, oh, what will I have to do in the new year to be able to cater for my school funding? And of course, subconsciously, you're also thinking about certain decisions or actions that you may have to make in order to go around this new challenge that has been posed. A few days after this nation headline, I saw another headline in the Standard where the Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu was saying the government has no intentions of increasing school fees, at least for the lower learning institutions. That probably brought some sense of relief for parents, but for university students, probably have something to keep thinking about. Look for the money, decide to defer in the intervening period as you plan yourself, or drop out altogether. Now, the priming theory has been advanced by scholars to try to explain how the media affects our feelings and how it influences the kind of decisions we make every time we interact with content. The priming theory is one from the family of cognitive theories that explain how the media affects people's behavior. These theories look at what goes in the mind of the audiences each time they interact with media content. It explains that the media has certain short term effects on people's behavior. According to Roscoe's Ewaldstone et al. 2009, the priming theory refers to the short term impact of exposure to the media on subsequent behavior of individuals. Indeed, over time, several social and cognitive psychologists have used the priming experimental methodologies to understand how we humans process information and how this affects our behavior. And indeed, trying to understand how do we store information in our memories. And some of these theories posit that our memories store information in the form of nodes. These nodes each represent a unique idea or information, and they are interconnected with other related nodes within the mind. And every time this node is fired or activated, then we are able to associate certain things with others and also able to remember certain ideas or concepts. And as such, human beings make decisions based on these preconceptions in the mind, which only need to be triggered for that an action to take place. So within the media concept, then priming refers to the effect of the content of the media, for instance, violence, stereotypes, and among others, on behavior and people's judgments, how they evaluate certain news stories, how they evaluate candidates for office, and how they relate to aggressive behavior in terms of their reactions. Domke et al. 1998 and Yenger and Kinder 1987 argue that media depictions can stimulate related thoughts in the minds of the audiences, which can influence their judgments and also decision making processes. Leonard Berkowitz, a leading psychologist, um, uh, undertook some experiments in 1984 to look at the effect of video games on audiences and reached a conclusion that mass media communication can give the audiences ideas that may be translated into open behavior, meaning that we can watch something on TV and be tempted to behave or think the way we have seen it. And I think this also explains within the Kenya context, for instance, why whenever they are heated the political times, especially around elections, especially after the announcement of elections and there are disputes over the outcome of the elections, the media tending to broadcast scenes of violence that have broken out across the country, and the efforts by the government to prevent the media from showcasing those scenes of violence, primarily because of the fear that once other people elsewhere see those kind of scenes, they're most likely to be persuaded or tempted to behave the way the other people are behaving, or develop some emotions that might lead them to behave in a certain manner. Again, it is understood that the prime effects of the media are short lived and may last for about 20 to 30 minutes or an hour, and tend to be more impactful, especially when the situations are ambiguous. So, why is the media such a powerful primer, you may ask? First of all, the media is ubiquitous, it is all over our lives. In Kenya, for instance, as we speak now, there are about 334 television stations broadcasting all manner of content and influencing how we perceive things every day and the kind of choices that we make. Secondly, there are certain aspects of the media, like newscasts, may cover a broad range of subjects from time to time, and this may influence how we perceive and interpret issues. Priming has been used to explain media violence, gender stereotypes, and also the interpretation of ambiguous print advertisements, and whether news teasers enhance attention and memory to news stories, among others. It's also been used to explain how advertisements affects our minds and the kind of choices we make as a result of that. Have you ever made a buying decision based on a TV advert? Have you disliked a particular brand or a particular project based on an advertisement you saw on TV? The answer could be yes or no, depending on how such adverts made you feel. But studies have shown that depending on how advertisements are structured, they can have certain impacts on the behavior and perceptions of audiences. Take, for instance, advertisements around the negative effects of drug abuse. While certain adverts have tended to focus on the negative aspects of drug abuse, some of them have mistakenly gone ahead to also try to counter certain beliefs or perceptions around certain positive aspects of drugs. For instance, while marijuana might have serious health effects on the users, there are those who believe that marijuana probably is medicinal or has certain positive effects on the users. And as such, certain advertisements may tend to project the negative aspects of marijuana, for instance, while at the same time trying to counter any positive aspects associated with the drug. And research now shows that certain directions in media advertisement, especially on drug abuse, can have a counter effect of actually attracting the audiences to certain positive aspects of that drug that ideally were never meant to be the objective of the advertisement. These have been very true through experiments in the US that have demonstrated that indeed certain advertisements can be counterproductive depending on how they are focused and how they're structured and the kind of messaging that they tend to put across. There are also studies on hockey playing boys and how exposure to violence on TV can influence how they behave when they go to play. Josephson, in 1987, for instance, carried out an experiment and he demonstrated that these boys, whenever they were exposed to violent media scenes, they tended to be more aggressive in the field, hitting their opponents with hockey sticks and even shoving them in the course of the play. So there have been debates whether priming really exists or not, but I think there is evidence through analysis that can demonstrate that indeed priming is present and also plays a bigger role in terms of how the media affects individuals from time to time. In politics, priming effect has been used to influence public opinion during political campaigns. The way the media depicts certain candidates in a particular way, the way they project certain agenda or manifestos of political candidates or parties in a particular way, has a way of shaping how the voters or the individuals watching the kind of content to vote in a particular way. Iyengar and Kinder, 1987, for instance, undertook a study in the US to understand how the media projection of certain candidates shaped the kind of decisions that the individuals or voters took when they were voting for those candidates. When they depressed or suppressed certain aspects of candidates and only projected certain aspects, it had a way of influencing how the voters make certain decisions. So Domke et al. 1998 have then used the term media priming effects to demonstrate the process by which the activated mental constructs can influence how individuals evaluate other concepts and also other ideas. In Kenya, for instance, we talk about the whole aspects of around climate change. We just recently hosted a high-powered African climate summit, linked around climate change, around carbon credits, and how they can mitigate the impact of climate change. As the media are grappling to project this very important meeting, the audiences who are following the conversations and the discussions probably were not making a lot of meaning in terms of what was being said and how it's directly impacted their lives to allow them to take certain choices that might contribute to the wider climate agenda. I mean, go plant more trees, how they reduce on use of certain fuels that probably are destructive to the environment. I mean, certain concepts were not coming out very clearly that could have pushed Kenyans to see the sense of urgency and why they need to take certain actions to mitigate the impact of climate change. Now we have the El Nino rains, for instance. When were they meant to come around? I remember a few weeks ago there were memes doing rounds in Nairobi when the rains were not forthcoming and there was great sunshine around, and people imagining that the El Nino sunshine is probably what was meant to be the phenomenon that will befall the country. And such kind of concepts, if they are not contextualized, then probably the audiences may not make certain desired meanings and take certain action that may be required of them to mitigate the impact of certain concepts. And indeed, media priming now is being used as an explanation of how we can make meaning on certain beliefs and how we store them in our memories and how we can reactivate them and trigger certain thoughts and emotions or actions that may lead to certain behavior. Let's look at priming and certain weaknesses around this theory. Scholars believe that the effects of priming may not be universal and can vary depending on the individuals and also in the circumstances they are in at the point at which they interact with the content of the media. And again, because the effect of priming are short lived, they tend to weaken over time, unless, of course, they are triggered through repetition, as in what happens in advertisements, or where information is recent, it's occurring at that time, is breaking news, and whether certain of those contents are applicable within people's or individuals' lives. And again, priming has been criticized as not the only explanation of how human beings make sense of the world around them, because it's grounded in the cognitive psychology and the associative network model of human memory. It may not fully capture the complexity of human decision making processes, which is a very complex affair and also influenced by certain circumstances and contexts that need to be understood. Priming theory is related closely to other, what I might call neighboring theories. While the priming theory explains the contexts within which media can affect emotions and public understanding of an issue and setting the stage on how they react or take certain actions, the schema theory, for instance, explains why the media can have long term effects on people's behavior by changing their knowledge structures and their understanding. The agenda setting theory, on the other hand, really says the media decides what we should think about. They decide what is important, what should occupy our minds by selecting what we should consider to be important. The framing theory, on the other hand, provides a focus, a lens through which we see things, through which we evaluate and analyze ideas and issues, and which then shape how we understand and how we react to them. So that is the thin line that separates the priming theory from the other neighboring theories within this context, which also tend to understand how the media impacts individuals from time to time, and how this can explain our behaviors and the kind of decisions that we make from time to time. So thank you very much indeed for your time. I hope this was insightful.